Hi everyone, I hope everyone is doing well and having a good week so far. Welcome back to another one of our live careers Q&As. This is our 5th session now, so I will be hosting today. So my name's Charlotte and I'm the Campaigns Development Coordinator here at the Students' Union, and I will be hosting today and presenting the questions. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. So if you don't know much about these sessions, these have been organised by the careers team and also the Students' Union to help you with your next step in your career. So whether that's in your first year, second year, third year, or if you've graduated, we're here to support you sort of throughout your next step and along that pathway. If you have missed any of our previous sessions and you do want to catch up, you can go on to the University of Leicester YouTube channel and all the sessions will be on there. So yeah, don't worry. And even with this one, this will soon be uploaded. So if you have missed today's, then don't worry. So kind of a bit around why we wanted to do these sessions is, firstly, we know that it's a really unsettling time for you as students at the moment. And I think with employment, you know, it is something maybe that you're worrying about, and these sessions are kind of designed to ease any anxieties that you might have. And we just kind of want to make you feel as supported as possible. So in today's session, we're going to be discussing sport in particular. We're going to be joined by Leicester Sport and Active Life, which is brilliant, and they're going to be able to provide a lot more information about how sport can really help you with your next job and the next step in your career. And I think from the SU side, we understand that sport is a really enriching experience, and we know that sport is a big part of the student lifestyle and their experience at university. And actually, there's a lot of key skills that you can gain from sport that you can apply to interviews, your CV, and actually it's going to really help you stand out. So you might be engaged in a lot of sport, but you may not actually realise just how many skills and transferable skills you have already, which is great. So just to recap, in today's session, we're going to be looking at what the skills and experiences you may have developed through sport. We're going to be looking at how you can use your participation when applying for your next step. And then we're going to be looking at understanding sort of the value of the transferable skills and how you can apply those to your future jobs. So without further ado, we're going to get on to passing on to the panel now. So first of all, we have Liz, and she is from Sport and Active Life. And we also have Sheila, who is from our careers team. So again, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is going to be a really, really valuable session for our students. So yeah, I'll pass you over to Liz now, who's going to introduce herself and sort of go into a bit more detail about what she's going to be covering in the session today.
Perfect. Thanks, Charlotte. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Liz. I'm the Sports Experience Manager at the university, so I work within the department that's called Sport and Active Life. The team that I look after are responsible for delivering all of the student-facing activities. That could be the Let's Do Leicester programme, intramural, scholarships, anything fun like some of the Santa runs or zombie runs that we've done in the past. So anything that you guys will see on offer in terms of being physically active, that will sort of be delivered through Sport and Active Life. So yeah, just going to have a little bit of a chat with you guys to let you know all the different options and opportunities that are available for you to be physically active, but also some of the skills that you might find coming out of the different opportunities that we have available to you. I think it's well known amongst everyone that sport or being physically active has a whole range of benefits, and I think everyone sort of recalls some of the more well-being side of those benefits. So if you think of like your mental health, your social or your emotional well-being, but I think it's sometimes easily forgotten that sport can actually contribute a lot to your employability. So if we use the example of the Let's Do Leicester programme, that was set up initially just to engage with students that maybe don't feel as comfortable going into a competitive environment, don't want to commit as much, but just want to engage in something. So already it's a good environment if you've got a bit of low confidence in terms of socializing with people or networking, meeting new people. It's a great safe place to go in and find those people that are in a similar position to you for you to engage with, But alongside that, actually taking part in any of the sessions. So we have things like yoga, basketball, football, anything. We've even done like glow in the dark, Zumba. It's a great way for you to actually build up some of the skills like your resilience, or trying to think, like your commitment. Your time management is another one that's easily forgotten. It takes a lot for you to actually schedule in, making the time to go and do these things. So little things like that do come up even if you're just doing something just for the fun of it. We have other programs like our Team Leicester program. So I think that's quite a well-known one. That obviously comes with a lot of commitment. That's a given one. But what students don't realise, you have to build up a lot of resilience as well. Sport naturally encourages you to go through those ups and downs. You get some wins, you get some losses, you have to bounce back, and you've got to keep going. So those are some of the skills and traits that employers will be looking for, and it'd be really good for you to start pulling those out and acknowledging them as you engage in some of these activities. Some of the other opportunities that we have are probably more tailored to actually getting you to develop those employability skills. So within Let's Do Leicester, there are paid roles. The intramural programme has also got volunteer roles, Team Leicester's committee roles. Those are all positions that have an element of responsibility to them. So you'd be asked to coordinate or facilitate sessions taking place. And so that's a great way for you to build up really strongly those skills and those transferable traits that employers are looking for. So your organisation, a lot of the time it's handling difficult situations or the experiences that you wouldn't typically get from just playing sport, but actually controlling a session that's happening. So there's a whole range of different programs that are available, and that will sort of help you enhance those skills that you have and make yourself more employable to prospective employers. So yeah, probably the only thing I'd say is don't feel like you've got to be in a position of power or responsibility to actually develop these skills. Just going to the gym, just doing the odd yoga session. There are plenty of skills that you can actually take out of that and actually use in terms of building your portfolio and making yourself more employable. So yeah, I think I've covered enough there. I won't go into too much detail because you probably have some questions around the specifics, so we can get onto that a little bit later on. So I'll pass you back to Charlotte, and then you'll probably hear from me in a bit.
Great. That was really helpful, and I think just outlining, some of those key skills that you mentioned about resilience is brilliant, and it's going to be really, really helpful. And I'll pass on to Sheila, who's from our careers team, who will kind of talk you through kind of what she does and kind of how she can support you.
Yeah, so I'm Sheila from the careers team, and my team provide lots of different support. Hopefully you'll have come across us in various ways already. And one of the things we do is give kind of practical help with how you can actually articulate those skills that you are developing through sport, and obviously all the other things as well, on your applications for your next step, be that employment or postgraduate study. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is some of those kind of practical tips about how you can kind of effectively talk about your sports in job applications. So whether that's on a CV, a cover letter, an application form, or at an interview. What I'm going to do is just break it down into 3 top tips. So the first tip that I wanted to cover was to don't just list it, but say something about it. So it's quite common to see on a CV, maybe under, say, the hobbies and interests section, a list of things. So like basketball, weight training, yoga, or even kind of some really impressive county tennis champion 2018. And it's really great to have all that stuff on your CV. What we would advise that you do is go a little bit further by actually telling the recruiter what that says about you as a candidate for the job and the skills that you're actually going to bring to them. So for example, you might say, instead of just saying yoga, you might say, daily yoga sessions help me to develop self-discipline and mental agility. Or you might say, I organised a charity basketball tournament utilising planning and teamwork skills. So already you're including those same things, but you're actually telling the recruiter something about the skills that you developed. So that takes me on to tip number 2, which is to focus on the transferable skills, and that's already been mentioned a few times already in the session today, but it's really important. So unless you're applying for directly sports related roles, then your sports activities in themselves aren't likely to be a requirement of the job. But most roles or courses are asking for people to have some transferable skills. So skills that you develop in one scenario, but actually can then utilise in another scenario, as in a job role, for example. So skills such as communication, teamwork, resilience, leadership, flexibility, there's a whole range of them. So you need to start thinking about your sports and reflecting on the transferable skills that you've demonstrated by taking part. And then that leads me on to the 3rd tip, which is to always tailor your applications to the job requirements. So when you apply for a role, you find out what the key requirements are for the role. And then when you're mentioning your sports participation, you frame it around a particular skill that's required. So, for example, if the role requires communication skills, then you could talk about how you have to work as maybe through a team you're in, have to work as a team, discuss strategies, debrief afterwards. That's just one example. Or if the job is saying that it requires somebody who's got energy and drive, you can talk about how you've set goals for yourself, how you've pushed yourself to excel or to take part, and how you've worked to fit sport around your study and other commitments. So by, just to summarise, by kind of not just listing it, but saying something about it, focusing on those transferable skills and then tailoring it to the particular skills that are required for a particular role or a particular opportunity. That's kind of a good starting point. I know it's really hard doing job applications. I've done plenty myself over the years. And what we really want to say is that we're here to help you with that. You're not on your own when it comes to doing that. We can offer one-to-one online appointments from the careers team. We can help you to develop your CV and written applications, and we can do mock interviews with you. So I would encourage you to book one of those appointments if you feel you need a little bit of help to just start thinking about how you can put those sporting activities into your job applications. So thanks for listening, and I'll hand back to Charlotte now.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sheila, and also thank you, Liz, again, for kind of introducing what you do. That's really, really helpful. And also, I think, yeah, thank you for sort of providing more of an insight into the value of sports in terms of employability as well. So anyway, so we're going to move on to the Q&A. So now you kind of know a bit more about sports and employability. Hopefully it will encourage you to kind of ask some questions. So yeah, no question is a silly question. So do make sure you do pop those in if you do have a question. And even if it's not directly related to sports, don't worry, like still post it, because we're still going to be able to answer your question, because obviously it's still related to careers and your next step. So we have had a few questions come in. So the first question we have is, I only attend Let's Do Leicester sessions. Am I able to tell my employer about this? So I think that question will probably go to Liz. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, there we go. So just to give everyone a bit of background, the Let's Do Leicester sessions are very much a social session. It doesn't require any commitment. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to be part of a team. You don't have to have any experience. It's very much just a turn up, do the session, and then you can just go We try and make it very, very social, so it's not based on who's winning or who's going to come top of this league or anything like that. Just following on from what Sheila had said, sessions like that will play a role in whatever is being asked of from the employer. So I think it's just important for you to understand what it is you're trying to take from the activity you've been doing and how it relates to what the employer is asking you to demonstrate. So if it's something around how you handle pressure, I think it would be acceptable for you to say, look, I handle pressure like this, but I also acknowledge that when things get too tough, I'm able to go and do a yoga session because that's how I manage to just relax and de-stress, and then I'm able to go back. So I think being able to pull in how you understand and how you're able to manage your own emotions, so your emotional awareness is really important, and that would be a good way for you to demonstrate that to the employer. I wouldn't play down any kind of physical activity. So as I mentioned before, you don't have to be in a position like a leadership type position. Just being able to do some physical activity and understand why you do it and how you then demonstrate that to the employer is really valuable. So yeah, tell them about as much as you're doing, as long as you can relate it to what they're asking you to demonstrate. Sure.
That's great. Thanks. I think that's a really good point. It's definitely like big up kind of what you've done, and I think as long as you can make it relevant, that's the most important thing, and actually the employer is going to be engaged and they're going to be interested in what you're saying. So we have got another question actually which relates to basketball. So the question is, I play in a basketball team. Can I talk about this if I get asked about teamwork in an interview? So I think I'll give that question to Sheila. Oh, Sheila, I think you're on mute again.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. So definitely is the answer. You can use that for an interview question. Often in an interview, you'll get asked questions along the lines of, can you tell me about a time when you've worked in a team? And a sporting team is a great focus for that kind of question. What's really important if you're asked that kind of question is to try and provide one specific example of a challenge that you and your basketball team have faced. So you're talking about one particular scenario, and talk through the way that you as an individual have contributed to that particular team challenge. So that's kind of a general tip really about any question you get asked about teamwork. It's very easy to say, oh, the team did this and the team did that and the team was successful. But when you're applying for a job and you're in an interview, you really need to stress what your particular role was within that team. Okay, so yeah, but absolutely, that's a really good example that you could use for a teamwork question. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Sheila. We've actually got another one which I think will probably sit quite well with you again. The question is, I did sport in high school, but I haven't taken part since starting university. Am I still able to put this on my job application?
Okay, thanks. Yes. I think the first point to make, well, actually, I'm going to make another point before that, is have you thought about actually getting involved in sport now? Because it might not be too late. So that's the first point. But then when it comes to things that you did at high school, you can definitely put those onto your CV if they add value to your CV. So it's about thinking about what's going to actually showcase my skills and qualities the best when it comes to this particular CV that I'm writing at this point in time. If you've got lots of other valuable stuff to put on your CV that's more recent, so maybe you're more involved in other areas like performing arts or politics or whatever you're interested in now, then you could still put that sporting activity from your high school days on your CV, but if you feel that the other things are more effectively showcasing your skills and they're more recent, so therefore they might get higher priority, then that's just really a kind of judgment that you've got to make. But definitely things from your high school days, if they're demonstrating skills that the employer is looking for, there's nothing to stop you from putting those on your CV. And again, going back to what I was saying about our services that we offer, if you've got questions like that and you're thinking, well, I'd really like somebody just to kind of guide me about what are the best things to actually pull out to put on my CV, then do book an appointment and we can go through with that with you, you know, tailored to your own particular situation. Okay, thanks. Perfect.
Thank you, Sheila. So another question, and I think this will probably sit well with Liz. So what are some of the key transferable skills that I can gain through sport?
Thanks, Charlotte. I'll probably go through some, but I'm sure Sheila will probably add in whatever I've sort of missed off that might be key. So I think like the most common is what things like your teamwork, your communication, those come out really, really easily through sport, whether that's an individual sport or a team-based sport. As much as individual sports require you to be alone, there is still a team around you that you're having to work with, you're having to communicate with. So those will be some of the key skills that you'll need to pull out. You can obviously look at things like your ability to work hard independently or as a team. Your accountability is another one that's quite key. You'll have within a sporting or physical activity environment, whether that's just for your own self or for others around you. A big one is results driven. Everyone that sort of does something in some capacity, whether it's for fun or at a competitive level, there is a result that everyone is looking to get, whether that's just to relax, whether it's to win, whether it's to get the most points, to be the fastest. So that's another key one I think would come out. Personally, I think it's the resilience side of things. You get a lot, you'll see a lot from people that take part in any sort of sport or physical activity. So that grit and that determination to bounce back and to get things done. And I think that's probably a quality that employers really look for nowadays, is that mental toughness, that grit. And I'm going to drop Sheila in it and say she's probably got a few more to add in now. More specific ones. These are my personal get it done skills.
Yeah, so I mean, you've ticked off most of the ones that I had on my list anyway, Liz. Just a couple of other ones. There might be sometimes some of these skills are quite similar, but I'd got self-motivation, but probably quite similar to some of the things you've mentioned. Maybe even strategic thinking, because that's quite a common skill that for graduate roles that employers are looking for, and you might have, you know, used that within your sport depending on the kind of activity that you've taken part in. Target driven, leadership, maybe even some more kind of, I suppose, I don't know, I was going to say low level skills, but I'm thinking more calm and level headed than having a healthy kind of work-life balance. So some of those things can also be skills and qualities that employers are looking for that your sport can demonstrate. Thanks.
Great, thank you both. Thanks, Sheila, for chipping in on that one as well. We have had another question, which is actually about CVs, which I think is quite a good question. It says, which section of my CV should I put sports achievements in? I'm going to direct that to Sheila.
Okay, yeah, so I don't think there's necessarily one single place that you would put your sports things in your CV, but that's kind of a good thing really, because it means that there's actually loads of different places that your sport participation can actually be relevant. So if sport's a big part of your life, you might actually have a whole section of your CV that's devoted to your sporting activities. But equally, depending on exactly how you engage with sport, I know Liz mentioned earlier that you might get involved in actually having a work experience role within sport or a volunteering role, for example. There are a whole range of sections on your CV that your sporting activities might go under. So it could be positions of responsibility, work experience, volunteering, clubs and societies, qualifications and awards, if maybe you've gained some awards and qualifications in relation to your sport. Equally, you might, and certainly our CV template that we suggest people use, you might have a key skills section. So you might have some headings like communication skills, leadership, or whatever skills you want to highlight. And you can actually use your sport as examples of how you develop those skills in that section of your CV. So lots of different sections of your CV where you can actually be mentioning sport, and it just really depends on kind of what your experience has been and what kind of role you've had in relation to sport, where you might want to slot those in. Okay, thanks.
Great, and I think I've just seen a question come in now. I think sort of leading on from that one, someone said, should I list all my sports achievements on my CV? I've got a lot, so I guess it's, yeah, should all the sports achievements be put on the CV, or how should students go about sort of doing that?
I can take that one if you like. Yeah, all right, okay. So, yeah. I think generally a CV should provide a kind of broad overview of your education, your skills, your experiences and other activities. So if you have a long list of sporting achievements, but you've also got some work experience and other achievements, it is best to aim for a balance. But that doesn't mean that you can't refer to that kind of breadth of sport involvement and achievement on your CV, because it's really important, as we've said, to demonstrate loads of different skills. But it might be, depending on what else you've got that you want to get into your CV, because generally you should keep your CV fairly short, say 2 pages as a maximum. And we would ideally say it should be 2 pages for a graduate role. You might not be able to say spend kind of 10 lines listing every single sporting achievement, because then you wouldn't have room for everything else you want to put on your CV. But what you could do is use 2 or 3 bullet points to really summarise the key points of those sporting achievements. And again, particularly focusing on the skills that you've demonstrated via those achievements. So yes, definitely kind of cover that that kind of wide breadth of sporting achievements and sporting activity, but summarise it so that you've got room for some of those other things as well. Okay, thanks.
Perfect, thanks Sheila. So another question. So how can I understand what skills I developed from being physically active? And I think Liz, potentially, sorry to drop you in it, I feel like you might be best placed to answer this one, if that's all right.
I've got a feeling this might be another. Oh, I've got a feeling this might be another combination between myself and Sheila. I'll say from a personal perspective of someone having played sport, I think you're encouraged to always look back on your performance when you play and review how you've done. So that reflection piece you're always encouraged to do, and that's something that I've taken and I've applied to other aspects of my life. So when you're considering what skills you might have developed through sport, I'd always say sort of take some time to look back and actually see how you've progressed, how you've developed, and why that has actually happened. Using things like the job specification and just taking some time to actually break it down and think back and reflect back on your own experiences and how you might have gained some of those skills or be able to demonstrate it is really, really useful. I know at the university there's obviously the Leicester Award, which actually helps encourage students to keep a record but also reflect back on some of the experiences and the skills that they've gained So having something like that is really useful. I know in the past I've kept like a bit of a journal, my own like developmental journal, where I can keep track, because there's so much that you can do. The question about the long list of sports achievements is exactly me. Like, there's just so much that you've done in your life, you tend to forget it. So having something like that is actually a really good way for you to go back once you're applying for jobs or preparing for interviews, to then say, actually, have I done anything on this, and have I gained this experience? So those would be sort of my own tips of how you can sort of reflect back on what you've done in sport. I don't know if Sheila's got anything a bit more professional from careers.
Not necessarily.
That's fine.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you've covered that really well, Liz. The only thing just to mention is that on our website, we've got something called the Transferable Skills Framework, which actually lists loads of transferable skills. So that might just be useful for people to have a look at, just to get an idea of what all those different skills are, and then, but do exactly as Liz said, just start kind of reflecting back, and that idea of keeping a journal and everything, really good tips. So yeah.
Great, thank you both again. We do have a couple more questions that I can see. So the next one is, how do I get prospective employers to recognise the skills I've developed from playing in a sports team and being a committee member? So I'm looking to who direct that to. Liz? Okay.
I think that we've touched on this quite a bit. It's about reflecting on what's being asked of you, what you're being asked to demonstrate in that job spec. It's going through the essential skills and having to break that down in terms of what experiences you've gained, and how you can demonstrate that as best as you possibly can. I'd probably say you're going to go through a lot of experiences in those roles, and try not to what's the phrase I'm looking for? Try not to bombard or try and squeeze everything in. Just be very explicit and try and keep things quite clear and simple. I know when you're in a sports team, there's so many examples of teamwork and communication and hard work that it can become a bit overwhelming, and you want to tell them about every single opportunity. But I think it's trying to pick out what's the best experience and what's going to absolutely nail what they're asking me to demonstrate within this job specification. So that might be, you know what, a committee member, even though you're in a leadership position, they might be asking something that's better suited to you actually physically taking part in sports. So I think you just need to weigh up what's being asked and weigh up your skills and experiences to how you can best tell them about that. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I was just kind of going to add on to that question. In terms of kind of being a committee member, I think there's a lot of other sort of skills as well that can come out of that. So, for example, something like budgeting, and obviously there's a lot of responsibility, isn't there, that comes with being a committee member. And I don't know if there's any other skills that you can add on to that, as well as sort of the obvious ones, because I think sometimes for students it's just identifying those skills and sort of digging through sort of what you've done to actually find, oh, actually I did do that. And I don't know, I personally, for me, when I've been applying for jobs, it's trying to remember everything that you've done. So I don't know if you've got any tips for sort of like recording these experiences and a way that students can kind of, I suppose, like remember all these different things that they've done.
I think it comes back to a little bit with waiting for the red box to ring. Comes back to a bit of what Sheila said on that transferable skills framework that's on the website. It's good for committee members to familiarise themselves with it before starting their positions, but also throughout. You've touched on it, Charlotte, there's so many experiences and situations that you'll go through as a committee member that you don't realise that actually I'm really employable because of this, and an employer will probably like bite my hand off to have me because of this. But it's just articulating that is the biggest bit. There's so many committee members that will have difficult conversations, having to manage relationships between friendships and teammates and coaches, that all of those are really, really valuable. It's just making sure that they're aware of what they're actually developing along the way. And I think having a look at that transferable skills framework helps. Leicester Award really does help. and then being able to just track everything as you go along will just help at the end. But yeah, completely agree. So many skills that you just don't even realise, and it's so important. Things like difficult conversations, negotiating, all of that does come out as a committee member. So yeah, that would be my tip.
Great, thank you, Liz. We just got one more question, which we have sort of spoken about already, but I feel like maybe I'll just ask it anyway. But it's, how many sport examples should I be talking about in an interview if the role I'm going for is not sports related? Yeah, Sheila?
Yeah, I can have a go at that one. So it is a good idea to use a broad range of different examples to showcase your skills and qualities in an interview. But having said that, if you've got two completely different examples that both happen to be sports related, there's nothing to stop you from using both of them at an interview. So it's really more important about how you do that. So it's what you draw out from the examples and how you reflect on what they say about you and your capability for the role. So I wouldn't necessarily use the same scenario from the same sport in two different answers, but you could potentially use a scenario from kind of teamwork maybe in one question, but going back to the whole thing of maybe committee membership or maybe volunteering work that you've done, just because it also happens to be related to sport. If it shows a different skill and you can articulate that well and use that example to draw out that skill, then there's nothing to stop you from using more than one. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So they're all the questions that we had. So we had quite a few, which is great. And yeah, so I guess that's sort of the end of the session. But I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that's joined today, but also to our panelists as well, Sheena and Liz, for shining a light sort of on the importance of sport participation and kind of how it can really equip you with key skills and sort of key knowledge as well, ready for when you're looking for jobs and applying for jobs as well. And yeah, really, we understand like how difficult it is to find employment. I think particularly at the moment, you know, this is a real challenge that students are facing. So yeah, we hope that you're able to reflect on sort of what you've done, and if you are part of a sports team, or if you are even, like you say, if you're doing yoga on the side, you know, that's all great stuff that you're going to be able to include in your CVs. So kind of don't kind of lose your confidence, and kind of remember that there are things that you can draw from. And when you actually look at what you're doing, you'll realise, actually, I've done a lot this year, or, you know, being part of that team, I learned this, or I built relationships with this person and this person. So yeah, we hope that you're able to take some practical skills. And before we go, I just want to say, definitely check out the careers website. So we should have a slide in a second that comes up with the, there it is, with the information. So if you head to le.ac.uk/careers, it's a brilliant resource, and actually there's a lot on there that can really help you. As Sheila and Liz said, there is the one-to-one appointments. There's online resources, there's resources for each step. So if in your first year, your second year, or even if you've graduated, you know, there's information there for you that's going to be really helpful. So yeah, thank you. And in terms of our next session, we're going to be back on the 23rd of July at 3 p.m. And that's going to be focusing on online assessments and how you can get yourself ready and prepared for maybe an interview that's on video, which is obviously quite a different experience. So yeah, we're going to provide you with sort of key tips and advice around that. And if you do have any further questions about sports or careers in general, if you feel like you need more guidance, you need some more tailored advice, please do visit the careers website and someone will get back to you and you'll be provided with that ongoing support. So yeah, I hope that everyone has found this useful. And again, thank you to our lovely panelists today for joining in and for providing this support that is very much needed, we feel. But yeah, thank you everyone. Thanks for tuning in.